All right. Hey guys, I'm Erin Bull. Happy Thursday. So today I want to do something a little different and step away from politics for a minute. And this is probably going to be one of the most important videos I've ever done. Today I want to talk to you about the impacts of hearing loss. And the reason that I'm even discussing this is because I went with my mother to the audiologist yesterday. And as a result of that experience, I put together this presentation to share the information with y'all because so to be clear, my mother does have some moderate hearing loss. She's not deaf or anything like that, but she definitely has some significant hearing loss. But for me, just hearing that, she was losing her hearing was not really that big a deal. She and many other older people always just says, hey, I'm just getting older. So after going to this visit with her to the audiologist, I learned a lot more about the impacts of hearing loss, and I want to share those with you. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull up this presentation and run through it quickly. Let's go ahead. And also, if you are catching this live, go ahead and leave your comments and I'll address them at the end, because with this PowerPoint up, I can't see my comments in real time, but I will address them. All right, so let's talk about the impacts of hearing loss. So approximately 1/3 of Americans between ages 65 and 74, and nearly half of those over the age of 75 have hearing loss. Hearing loss is the third most prevalent chronic health condition facing older adults. So I emphasized, or excuse me, I italicized the chronic health condition part, because like I said, I never attributed hearing loss as a real health condition, but it is. And I'm going to show you how and why. So untreated hearing loss can lead to lots of things. It can lead to irritability, negativism, and anger, fatigue, tension, stress, and depression, avoidance or withdrawal from social situations, social rejection and loneliness, reduced alertness and increased risk to personal safety, impaired memory and ability to learn new tasks, reduced job performance. Sorry, I forgot y'all can't see it. All right, there we go. Okay, I'm gonna go back into it. All right. Social rejection and loneliness, reduced alertness and increased risk to personal safety, impaired memory and ability to learn new tasks, reduced job performance and earning power, diminished psychological and overall health, increased number of falls and accidents, potential decrease in cognitive skills, reduced short-term memory, and higher incidences of dementia. Those with untreated hearing loss experience 46% higher total health care costs, almost 50% more hospital stays, and 44% higher risk of being readmitted to the hospital within 30 days compared to those without hearing loss over a 10-year period. Hearing loss has been linked to feelings of depression, anxiety, frustration, social isolation, and fatigue. Untreated hearing loss is associated with a greater risk of depression, dementia, heart attack, and falls. And over 10 years, untreated hearing loss was associated with a 52% greater risk of dementia, 41% higher risk of depression, 30% greater risk for falls when compared to those with no hearing loss. So what happens is that as you walk, your ears pick up subtle cues that help with balance. Hearing loss mutes those important signals. It also makes your brain work harder just to process sound. This subconscious multitasking may interfere with some of your mental processing needed to walk safely. So before I go to the next slide, one of the things that we learned is that it's technically your brain that hears. So your ears pick up the sounds and the words, and it's your brain that processes them. So if your ears are not absorbing the sounds the way that they used to, your brain is not processing them the way that they used to, or the way that your brain used to either. So hearing loss increases the risk for dementia 3 ways. Hearing loss leads to social isolation, which is a known risk factor for dementia. Hearing loss shifts cognitive load. The brain basically steals energy needed for memory and thinking to compensate for hearing loss. Hearing loss is proven to accelerate brain atrophy or shrinkage. In a recent study with adults with untreated hearing loss were more likely to report depression, anxiety, and paranoia than peers who wore hearing aids. Exclusion from communication can cause feelings of loneliness, isolation, and frustration, particularly among older people who have hearing loss. Brain shrinkage, which is when the hearing section of the brain grows inactive. It results in tissue loss and changes in brain structure, creating the first link between hearing loss and Alzheimer's disease. Studies show that brains of people with hearing loss shrink or atrophy more quickly than brains of people with normal hearing. Brain overload, which is an overwhelmed brain, creates the second link between hearing loss and dementia. When it's difficult to hear, the brain must work overtime just to understand what people are saying. Straining to hear all day, every day, depletes a person's mental energy and steals brain power needed for crucial functions like remembering, thinking, and acting. This can further set the stage for Alzheimer's, dementia, and other cognitive disorders. So why aren't hearing aids covered by Medicare? So when Medicare was passed in 1965, the assumption was that hearing loss was an inevitable part of the normal aging process. So hearing aids and associated services were excluded from coverage. At present, very few states require health insurers to cover the cost of hearing aids for people of all ages. A pair of provider-prescribed hearing aids can cost more than $4,000. And because of the stigma of hearing loss, the average older adult waits 7 to 10 years to get a hearing device, and only 20 to 30% of adults who could benefit from a hearing solution actually get one. Which this only makes the problem worse, because the longer a person has uncorrected hearing loss, the greater the risk to the brain of losing the ability to translate the sound of someone talking into comprehensible speech. So a couple of things I want to point out here. Number one, in most cases, hearing aids are not covered by insurance, and certainly they're not covered by Medicare. So hearing aids are pretty expensive from what we've seen. I think the lowest pair that they offered was $3,000, and they have some as high as $8,000, $9,000. But they do offer financing for them, and I know that the average person doesn't have that kind of money laying around. However, I do think that that's a smaller investment to maintain a person's mobility. You know, for my mom to continue to function normally rather than continuing to deteriorate through hearing loss, potential falls, stays in a hospital and things like that. And they do offer financing for them. So the payments, it depends on credit score, of course. But so hearing aids are not covered, but they are necessary. And the biggest part of this for me was understanding the brain functioning, the brain shutting down through untreated hearing loss. So I want to just emphasize that to you guys as well, because that was the biggest thing that I learned at this experience. So I want to talk to you about my mother's test. And so what they did was they told her to sit down on the stool, close her eyes about 5 to 7 feet away, and just repeat the words that you hear. So, the doctor performed this test and gave her this list of 25 words. So what we learned from this is that my mother is losing the ends of words. And so they're just completely falling off. So the first word on the test was tax, T-A-X. And my mother said back cat, C-A-T. And what this shows is that, that's her mind playing a guessing game. Because when you hear ta and then you guess, it's not hat because you heard a hard consonant at the beginning of that. So it could be hat, it couldn't be sat because you clearly heard a t. But she came up with cat because that's the mind guessing like that. That's close to what I heard. So this demonstrates some of the miscommunication that takes place for hearing loss. Because one of the things that I didn't understand was that hearing loss happens this way, to where you lose parts of words. I thought you just like didn't hear them clearly. They came kind of muffled and things like that. But my mother is actually losing the ends of words. So for example, the next word was teeth, T-E-E-T-H. And my mother said T, T-E-E or T-E-A, like sweet tea, because she missed the T on the end of teeth. Another example of that was the final word, pitch, P-I-T-C-H. My mother said pit, P-I-T. She completely did not hear the ch in pitch, and so basically unaided, she got 20% correct. And while we were there, they gave her hearing aids to try on, for her to see how they work and get an understanding. And it also gave her the ability to hear clearly. So after this test, with the hearing aids, she performed at 85% of functionality. They didn't give her the same test. They gave her a different audio test. And so her brain processed 85% of what she heard, as opposed to 20% here. So, and another thing to point out is that any level of brain deterioration that occurs due to hearing loss or period, it's not reversible. That is permanent. So that is one of the most important reasons why, if you notice yourself or anybody has marked hearing loss, you want to get it addressed, because you can never recover the amount of brain functionality that is lost, but you can at least maintain what is still there. So if my mother gets these hearing aids, then she'll at least be able to retain that 85% functionality of her brain versus the 20% unaided. So now we have a special guest. Let me see if she's gonna be ready. But I'm gonna call my mother and allow her to just tell you what her experience was with this, because I want you to be completely informed and have a clear understanding of, what it's like to encounter someone who is dealing with hearing loss, and what it is to be, and what it's like to be someone who is suffering from hearing loss. Because, with your vision, when that goes out, you notice the TV is not as clear, the colors aren't as clear, words aren't as clear. But when you start to have hearing loss, it's a gradual thing. So eventually you kind of start thinking that somebody doesn't speak clearly. Someone doesn't speak loud enough. Speaking of loud enough, that is another thing about hearing loss. So there comes a point of time where the brain just no longer functions or processes certain words or certain sounds because it hasn't done it in so long. So yelling will not help that. Speaking louder or anything, because that person has not processed those types of words or that particular word or whatever for so long that no matter how loud you say it, they just won't get it. So that's another reason to, if you notice hearing loss in yourself or anyone else, go ahead and get it addressed. So let me call my mom and let her give you her side of it. I know she ain't about to do this to me while I'm live.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi, daughter.
All right, you ready?
That's ready to go.
Okay. So what were the signs that made you realize you may be suffering from hearing loss?
One, my daughter saying, Mom, did you hear that? Mom, why is that so loud? I told you. And not hearing instructions that I've been given. Hearing some things hearing words, but wah, 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 wah.
Okay. And on that note, I forgot to put this in my video, so I'm gonna say it now. So with my mother, one of the things that she suffers from is there are certain tones she cannot hear. So like certain things that sound like the beeping of a stopwatch, she can't hear it. For example, we were at the Walmart and she put her debit card in the card reader, the chip reader, and it beeps to tell you to take it out. And I'm telling her, Mom, it's telling you to take the card out. It's been approved. Come on, come on. She just did not hear it. All right. So since you tried on the hearing aids while we were at the office, which gave you the ability to hear normally, what are you missing without them?
I am missing a lot. I had to apologize because I had been fussing at a certain someone because he wasn't speaking well. And with the hearing aid, I will not hear it well.
All righty. And can you briefly share your thoughts on your experience with the audiologist? And what else would you like to express to others in regards to hearing loss?
With any concern of the hearing loss, have it checked out. It is not about vanity, it's about sanity. When you're hearing only part of a conversation, your answers may not make sense to the other party in the conversation. And then you get into arguments or confrontations because either you're not listening or you're changing the subject. My experience with the audiologist was excellent. She really gave me the absolute understanding of how I have been affected by what I was not hearing. And she also made me realize that the brain as a muscle, when it is missing certain stimulations, which are signals that I was not hearing, then I would no longer recognize what that was being said or the sound or and I realized that it affected my mood because I found myself getting irritable because people were not speaking well. They were getting aggravated with my asking them to repeat themselves.
Okay, well, thank you very much for sharing that, Mom. I appreciate you and your support. And we will definitely do what we have to do to get you those hearing aids. And I will give you a call once I finish this video.
Thank you, Donna.
I love you. Love you too. Okay. All right. Well, that pretty much covers everything else that I want to go over. And take this off. Okay. There we go. Yes. So it's about the impacts of hearing loss. And okay, let's see. I hope that opens your eyes to the impacts of hearing loss and how to recognize them, and to just know that you need to get it under control or get it checked out as soon as you recognize that that is indeed a problem. Like I said, for my mother, it is not as bad as it could be, but it is, she was classified as having moderate hearing loss. So you have normal hearing, mild hearing loss, moderate hearing loss, and severe. So that's where she is on the scale. But obviously we're doing what we have to do to get that taken care of. So just again, in closing, old people are going to get old, but we can do what we can to keep them sane. And that's pretty much all I have for you. Again, guys, thank you so much for your support. Thank you for watching. Please share this video with any and everyone that you know, and just get them to understand the impacts of hearing loss and the importance of getting it addressed. And I'm just going to stay all the way away from politics on this video. So I'll do another one shortly, like in a couple days or so, to get back on task with what we've been discussing lately. But as always, guys, I am Erin Bull. Thank you so much for your support. Please like this video, share this video with any and everyone that you know. And I will see you guys soon. Have a great day.